then his heart failed him. He could not bear the thought of surrendering altogether the privilege and the pleasure of giving counsel to Victoria, of being cut off completely from the power and the intimacy which had been his for so long and in such abundant measure. Though he had declared that he would be perfectly discreet in his letters, he could not resist taking advantage of the opening they afforded. He discussed in detail various public questions, and in particular gave the Queen a great deal of advice in the matter of appointments. This advice was followed. Lord Melbourne recommended that Lord Heytesbury, who, he said, was an able man, should be made ambassador at Vienna, and a week later the Queen wrote to the Foreign Secretary urging that Lord Heytesbury, whom she believed to be a very able man, should be employed on some important mission. Stockmar was very much alarmed. He wrote a memorandum pointing out the unconstitutional nature of Lord Melbourne's proceedings and the unpleasant position in which the Queen might find herself if they were discovered by Peel, and he instructed Anson to take this memorandum to the ex-minister. Lord Melbourne, lounging on a sofa, read it through with compressed lips. "This is quite an apple pie opinion," he said. When Anson ventured to expostulate further, suggesting that it was unseemly in the leader of the Opposition to maintain an intimate relationship with the Sovereign, the old man lost his temper. "God eternally damn it!" he exclaimed, leaping up from his sofa and dashing about the room. "Flesh and blood cannot stand this." He continued to write to the Queen as before, and 2 more violent bombardments from the Baron were needed before he was brought to reason. Then, gradually, his letters grew less and less frequent, with fewer and fewer references to public concerns. At last they were entirely innocuous. The Baron smiled. Lord M. had accepted the inevitable. The Whig ministry resigned in September 1841, but more than a year was to elapse before another and an equally momentous change was effected, the removal of Lehzen. For in the end the mysterious governess was conquered. The steps are unknown by which Victoria was at last led to accept her withdrawal with composure, perhaps with relief, but it is clear that Albert's domestic position must have been greatly strengthened by the appearance of children. The birth of the Princess Royal had been followed in November 1841 by that of the Prince of Wales, and before very long another baby was expected. The Baroness, with all her affection, could have but a remote share in such family delights. She lost ground perceptibly. It was noticed as a phenomenon that, once or twice, when the Court travelled, she was left behind at Windsor. The Prince was very cautious. At the change of ministry, Lord Melbourne had advised him to choose that moment for decisive action, but he judged it wiser to wait. Time and the pressure of inevitable circumstances were for him. Every day his predominance grew more assured, and every night. At length he perceived that he need hesitate no longer, that every wish, every velleity of his had only to be expressed, to be at once Victoria's. He spoke, and Lehzen vanished for ever. No more would she reign in that royal heart and those royal halls. No more, watching from a window at Windsor, would she follow her pupil and her sovereign walking on the terrace among the obsequious multitude, with the eye of triumphant love. Returning to her native Hanover, she established herself at Buckeburg, in a small but comfortable house, the walls of which were entirely covered by portraits of Her Majesty. The Baron, in spite of his dyspepsia, smiled again. Albert was supreme. 4. The early discords had passed away completely, resolved into the absolute harmony of married life. Victoria, overcome by a new and unimagined revelation, had surrendered her whole soul to her husband. The beauty and the charm which so suddenly had made her his at first were, she now saw, no more than but the outward manifestations of the true Albert. There was an inward beauty, an inward glory, which, blind that she was, she had then but dimly apprehended, but of which now she was aware in every fibre of her being. He was good, he was great. How could she ever have dreamt of setting up her will against his wisdom, her ignorance against his knowledge, her fancies against his perfect taste? Had she really once loved London and late hours and dissipation? She, who now was only happy in the country, she who jumped out of bed every morning, oh, so early, with Albert, to take a walk before breakfast, with Albert alone! How wonderful it was to be taught by him, to be told by him which trees were which, and to learn all about the bees, and then to sit doing cross stitch while he read aloud to her Hallam's Constitutional History of England, or to listen to him playing on his new organ. "The organ is the first of instruments," he said, or to sing to him a song by Mendelssohn, with a great deal of care over the time and the breathing, and only a very occasional false note. And after dinner, too, oh, how good of him! He had given up his double chess, and so there could be round games at the round table, or everyone could spend the evening in the most amusing way imaginable, spinning counters and rings. When the babies came, it was still more wonderful. Pussy was such a clever little girl. "I am not Pussy, I am the Princess Royal," she had angrily exclaimed on one occasion. And Bertie, well, she could only pray most fervently that the little Prince of Wales would grow up to "resemble his angelic dearest father in every respect, both in body and mind." Her dear mamma, too, had been drawn once more into the family circle, for Albert had brought about a reconciliation, and the departure of Lehzen had helped to obliterate the past. In Victoria's eyes life had become an idyll, and if the essential elements of an idyll are happiness, love, and simplicity, an idyll it was, though indeed it was of a kind that might have disconcerted Theocritus. "Albert brought in dearest little Pussy," wrote Her Majesty in her journal, "in such a smart white merino dress trimmed with blue, which Mamma had given her, and a pretty cap, and placed her on my bed, seating himself next to her, and she was very dear and good. And as my precious invaluable Albert sat there, and our little love between us, I felt quite moved with happiness and gratitude to God." The past of only 3 years since, when she looked back upon it, seemed a thing so remote and alien that she could explain it to herself in no other way than as some kind of delusion, an unfortunate mistake. Turning over an old volume of her diary, she came upon this sentence: "As for the confidence of the Crown, God knows, no minister, no friend ever possessed it so entirely as this truly excellent Lord Melbourne possesses mine." A pang shot through her. She seized a pen and wrote upon the margin: "Reading this again, I cannot forbear remarking what an artificial sort of happiness mine was then, and what a blessing it is I have now in my beloved husband real and solid happiness, which no politics, no worldly reverses can change. It could not have lasted long as it was then, for after all, kind and excellent as Lord M. is, and kind as he was to me, it was but in society that I had amusement, and I was only living on that superficial resource, which I then fancied was happiness. Thank God! For me and others this is changed, and I know what real happiness is. V.R." How did she know? What is the distinction between happiness that is real and happiness that is felt? So a philosopher, Lord M. himself perhaps, might have inquired. But she was no philosopher, and Lord M. was a phantom, and Albert was beside her, and that was enough. Happy certainly she was, and she wanted everyone to know it. Her letters to King Leopold are sprinkled thick with raptures. "Oh, my dearest uncle, I am sure if you knew how happy, how blessed I feel, and how proud I feel in possessing such a perfect being as my husband." Such ecstasies seemed to gush from her pen unceasingly and almost of their own accord. When one day, without thinking, Lady Lyttelton described someone to her as being "as happy as a queen," and then grew a little confused, "Don't correct yourself, Lady Lyttelton," said Her Majesty; "a queen is a very happy woman."